I think now we need to move on, I guess, to the Light of the Jedi.
Light of the Jedi. Oh,
So-
the brand new multimedia. I'm such an idiot. It's not brand new.
been
The
out for,
late
like-
to the party Badonka feature of,
Yeah.
of the High Republic.
It's been out for, what, a year and a half or
It
something?
has.
It's been a little while.
It's been a bit. They're already on phase 2, Aaron, and we
Oh.
barely scratched the surface of phase 1.
You're right.
So we should also put out a little disclaimer. This podcast was supposed to be out a month ago.
Yes, it was.
And it's been a month since I've read it.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of new characters. There's
There
a lot of stuff. So
is a
I
lot.
have a cheat sheet. I'm going to try. But if we forget a name or even a whole chapter, it's just going to happen.
Sure, yeah.
yeah.
I'm hoping to not get too much wrong, and
Yeah.
I guarantee I'm going to forget names and stuff. Because I will say this one, as opposed to the last book we did, which was Brotherhood, this one I feel like was harder for me to get into.
Very different.
Because I relate it more to, like, if you know, the first time reading Game of Thrones,
Yep.
especially if you haven't seen the show or anything, right? There's so many characters. There's a world that you're kind of learning, because this is a long time before episode 1, you know? So, like, what is this galaxy
About
like?
200 years, yeah.
Who are these characters? And I'm trying to, like, almost put faces to them and stuff, you know?
I get exactly what you mean.
And it was tricky for me to be like, whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker, I have pictures in my head of what they're looking like, what they're sounding like.
You also have an idea of the character, like, you know what they love, you know what
Yeah.
they hate, you know what they fight for, you know
Yeah.
where they end up.
Yeah, exactly.
We're 200 years before anything that we know, so all of this stuff feels fresh. And I think there's an excitement about that.
Sure.
But to your point, there's also this feeling of not, like, you know, shifting sands and not knowing exactly what's going on, which is why I always, for books like these, I tend to reread, and I will reread this eventually.
Yeah.
But
It's-
the reread is always, for me, way more
Easier.
enjoyable and easier, yeah.
I think this book felt much more like like an old EU book
Yeah.
of, like, introducing new characters and new things.
Yeah.
Because, like, the EU went
It's
in,
a new book refreshing old stuff. Yeah.
it went into a lot of stuff, and you would have some crossover and stuff too. But, like, the Brotherhood book, I felt like did a lot more of,
Yeah.
we're gonna fit this story of characters in here, and
Yeah.
it's like this was an episode of Clone Wars, but, you know, as a book.
Yeah.
Whereas this one was like, here's a new story with new enemies, new characters you don't know, and we're gonna tell a new story in the same universe and stuff. And I did like it though. I
Me
did
too.
enjoy
I
it.
loved it. I loved the mystery.
Sure.
Right? Mystery is one of the best, most common story threads that we have, right? And we set up with this incredible first act, and honestly, it did feel like a movie of the crisis in the Hetzel system, right?
Yeah, the disaster.
The disaster of the Legacy's run. Like, it just, that opening felt Star Wars. And here's the thing, too, like, this is a Jedi story, kind
Yeah.
of. I mean, there's a lot of characters, but it's mainly like, hey, here's an era of Jedi that is new. And when we say new, we mean at their prime, at their
Sure.
peak, right?
Yeah.
The Jedi we meet in the Star Wars films and the Clone Wars, those are the Jedi right before the fall.
Yeah.
They're the Jedi that failed. They're the Jedi that didn't do what they needed to do. Here, these Jedi do what needed to be done.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
also feel like in episodes 1 through 3, we're getting more of like, here is the Jedi soldier.
Yeah.
Here, I feel like we're getting like
Peacemakers.
Here are the Jedi coming in, and they're like, they're peacemakers.
They're peacemakers.
They're like emergency response.
Yeah.
You know, they're coming in to save lives as
Yeah.
much as they can. They're not coming in just to fight a war.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is
They're
cool.
shepherds.
We're seeing Jedi not necessarily being the Jedi we've seen before, and I like that.
Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite lines from a movie called The Patriot is from a preacher, and he's a shepherd of his people, and he says, at times, during times of great strife, like a shepherd must tend his flock, and at times fight off the wolves. And this story also has some crazy enemies.
It does.
These Viking, how do you say it?
The Nihil.
The Nihil. The Nihil.
The,
Now, when I think of that name, I think of Darth
Nihilus?
Nihil. No, Nihilus is from KOTOR 2. Darth Nil is one of the Star Wars Legacy characters, which was a comic book with Cade Skywalker fighting Darth Krayt, and he had something called the One Sith. They weren't a rule of 2; they were a rule of 1. They were like, they all considered themselves like the
hive
same
mind-ish
Sith,
in a way, or
and
something?
there was a character that had this big, long, like lance-like lightsaber,
Sure.
and he was Darth Nil. So each time I came across Nihil, I kept thinking about that and getting
Gotcha.
distracted.
So I kept thinking of Darth Nihilus.
Darth Nihilus, yeah.
And then I was also thinking about, like, could this be a cult slash group that have made themselves after like that type of Sith name or something like that, or were they led by anything before? So I had more questions as we were going through. I'm like, Nihil.
Yeah, but I love
that.
learning about him. That culture. What's his name? The name of the eye, Marchion Ro.
Marchion. Marchion.
I have to rely on you. I think we have a picture of him actually at some point, Marchion Ro. But the eye of the Nihil. I just really loved that idea, right? This hyperspace. This was like a cool crash course into how hyperspace works.
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
The hyperspace. It is fun to see some of the previous lore that we don't
Marchion is what
know.
people are saying.
Yeah, Marchion. I was looking it up too because I was like, I don't think it was Marchion, although the audiobook pronounced it that way.
Okay.
I was told that it wasn't Marchion. That's why I was like, I think it's Marchion.
Interesting. Okay.
But no, I mean it was neat to see like precursors to stuff.
Yeah.
Like they talk about like the hyperspace and how things are new and we don't really have like things laid out, right?
Yeah.
But they also talked about like Bacta. And they're working on Kolto, and there's this, there's like a new medical method that they're working on. So we hear like what they have now, but what they're wanting to work towards that we know they get later on. And I was like, well, that stuff's kind of cool to like just have this fill in the gaps of like progression, I guess. You know?
For fans of Knights of the Republic, Kolto is the product of the Selkath, right? On Manon.
From Manon, yeah.
So we get to kind of bring in just a little bit of legend. There's a couple of moments like that in this book that I really enjoy, including one of my favorite of two. Like, there's a lot of really cool Jedi in this. I can't really lock down my absolute favorite yet.
Sure.
But Avar, Chris, and Elzar Mann are a really cool group.
Sure.
Like a cool team. Avar Chris has battle meditation.
That's one thing I thought about too. Like
they don't ever say it, but that's Bastila's battle meditation.
First off, the disaster thing, I wasn't expecting this book to be
and here's Avar Chris too
laid out how it was.
Yeah.
And like how important like we had the one part, and I'm like, we are wrapping up this disaster. I should be almost done with this book now, right? And I looked at the time, and I'm like, I'm only halfway done.
Oh.
And what's going on? I'm like, there's 3 parts? What?
Yeah, the disaster's like here.
Yeah, the disaster is like
this is the first
a beginning chunk of it all. But I was like, just the way they wrapped that up and the way they used her like battle meditation-ish.
We'll just say battle meditation. That's exactly what it was.
It's connecting like all these Force users together.
It's a
stuff.
network, they would call it.
I loved how they talked about like the one guy who started like a report where like the news across the galaxy was seeing this, and like everyone started like all the Jedi feeding their energy
like a spirit bomb
to help push this thing out of the way so it didn't explode the entire
amazing
system and stuff. I was like, oh, it's so cool.
It's both great because it makes you feel like the Jedi are huge in this era, right? They are, but this is what it's like when Palpatine isn't doing what he's doing. The Jedi in our movies are arrogant.
Yeah.
Like there's moments in the Clone Wars, moments in the movies where it's like the Sith can't, like we would have sensed the Sith returning.
Yeah.
That's how good we are. But Palpatine's putting that shroud of the dark side up, right? That's not the case here.
Yeah.
The rule of two is out there, yes, and the Sith are out there, but this is what the Jedi should be. And they should be peacekeepers. They should be U.S. Marshals. They should be the people that come in and just try to help, be the shepherds. And that kind of like network, maybe that's something that's not possible as we know the Jedi in the era that we're familiar with,
Yeah.
Because people like Avar Chris, it's really cool. I also should say I love the Chancellor in this book. Chancellor So.
The female Chancellor?
Yes.
I was like, oh, we got a female Chancellor. That's really
Don't
cool.
you just wish to have a politician like that? I'm sure that we're going to get further into it. People in the chat are probably like, oh, you fucking idiot. It's another Palpatine.
Yeah, very sure.
But I love her. Like, I love this idea of we are the Republic.
Yeah.
Because the Jedi can look at each other and say, hey, may the Force be with you. But the average Joe's not going to feel that way. But you can if you have pride in your government and one that actually works.
And the way they used that line a few times, like it was very like encouraging, but it was also sometimes very sad.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was about sacrifice. Sometimes, it might be about like this person's like, we are the Republic.
Sure.
But I will help save the Republic by sacrificing myself, But other times it was more of a, we are the Republic and all the Jedi are working together and we're going to do this, or all the people are coming together and we're going to do this. And I like that as a mantra that they had back then. I thought it was really cool.
The only thing that gives me pause is that I think I like her too much.
Sure.
Much like senators probably did Palpatine when he rose to power.
Sure, yeah.
Also, she has like these two sweet like lion beast things, and I'm like, well, that screams bad guy to me.
Typically,
so I don't know. We'll see. But as of right now, I've bought it hook, line, and sinker. And the idea of the space station that's going out in the Outer Rim, I think is really cool. It feels like a pioneer thing.
Shoot, what they call it? Did I write down what it's called? I don't know if I remember.
I keep having Skyhook in my head, but that's not
the Skyhook. That was from Dash Rendar.
Yeah, that's from Dash Rendar.
That's the Shadows of the Empire. But they had it.
Starlight Beacon. I didn't read it.
Whatever. But yeah, the Starlight Beacon, like just that idea and being the outpost and stuff and helping with the Outer Rim. There's a lot of aspects of that of this book that I like, of like what we set up. Because while I feel like this book did pretty well as like a story on its own, it also, I feel like, ends where it's like, this is setting up what the High Republic is going to be dealing with and like what we're going to do. And I was like, this
a TV show
plays out pretty well, where I'm like, I'm interested and I want to see more of it and everything. But,
there's certainly a feeling of like it ended, and I was like, oh, I got 3 more, I guess.
What's the next one?
You know, like I kind of felt like my dad when he watched Fellowship of the Ring, and he was like, they didn't get to the mountain. You know, and I'm like, well, yeah, Dad, that's in the 3rd movie. He's like, 3rd? There's 3 of these?
There's 3 of these movies?
Yeah. I was like, I'm not watching more, but that's the difference. I'm all in. We're not going to get through the High Republic as fast as some other people maybe.
Sure.
But we will get there.
Yeah.
But, you know, what type of things in this book, Aaron, like as a Star Wars fan, like stood out to you?
What stood out to me?
Yeah, what stood out to you?
Well, one thing I've really been enjoying about the books so far has just been the feel of the Force. Is the descriptions of what they go through and what it's like. I enjoy a lot more than just what I see in the movies of, like, I just do a Force push.
Yeah.
And like they did a Force push and there's the action.
Books have their strengths, they have their weaknesses.
It's talking about like the power it takes from you and like what it feels like, and you know, this book too, with as many characters as there were, it also really made me care about a lot of them. Yeah. And like there was one in the disaster, and then in the disaster part,
the Hetzel system.
Yes. Yeah. There's so many characters that show up.
So many. It's overwhelming,
this, right? Like
I was overwhelmed.
Yeah. There's Loden, Greatstorm, and his Padawan Bell, which I really enjoyed those two a lot. Yeah. There was Avar Kriss involved. Yep. There was also a what? I don't remember what her name was. There was a Jedi who was a not a Chiss. Cad Bane. What's Cad Bane's? It was
Cad Bane is a it starts with a D. I haven't studied Star Wars in so long. I'm losing everything. Why am I spacing
Duro right now?
Duros.
Duros.
Yeah.
Which I thought that character was very interesting. And also
was that Indira? Indira Stokes? Is that who that is? Again,
maybe?
The names are hard, but she was mainly a pilot, right?
Yeah, she was mainly a pilot. She was involved in the disaster. I think she died
to Tommy. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's
Thank you,
I'm thinking of Indira, a different character.
Tayami. There was a mention in their part 2 that I thought was very interesting. They were talking about the Duros having these like chest sack things of like poison, and I was like, wait,
what the fuck is that?
I don't remember that ever being a thing anywhere. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I never saw like Cad Bane fighting Quinlan Vos and go.
Yeah, I was like, where's this? and they described it as being like an old,
like a sack.
Yeah, like an old evolutionary thing that they don't use anymore as like protection from their planet from when they had like species that would eat them and stuff. And I was like, well, that's interesting.
It's like we have organs that we don't use, and you can just take that. You can take your gallbladder out.
I suppose the appendix is like not needed or whatever. So, but there was a few things like that I thought were kind of tossed in and added that might be coming from something that I don't know, but I was like, that's an interesting thing to kind of bring in here. But like it's been a while. I'm trying to make sure I remember. Their death I don't think hit me as much. 'Cause I'm pretty sure they had died during the disaster.
Yeah, you're right.
But the one that really hit me, and I don't know why necessarily, there was a captain that was
Captain of the Legacy's Run.
Not Hedda or Edda. Right?
Yeah.
That was the captain,
Hedda
I think.
Cassett, I think.
Yeah. I mean, the opening section there I thought was done really well.
Me too.
And I like the way they ended that like chapter of being like, she did all this not knowing if she saved anyone.
I really like the endings a lot of the chapters.
Oh, man. That's such a, like, she sacrificed herself doing these moves, hoping to save someone, and she's gonna die, not knowing if it worked at all.
Sure.
You know. But
now, what captain are you talking about?
So there was a group where they were trying to save like a space station or something that was like flying all crazily.
Yes.
And they had a robot that was getting people off the ship.
Oh, yeah.
And then they had another engineer who went down, had to push a button.
Yeah.
And then he was getting ready to leave, and his tentacles could smell someone else nearby. Yeah. And he had the robot that he was going to sacrifice save that person, and he sacrificed himself. And for some reason, that one hit me much harder than like most of the other deaths. He
was a kid.
I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, I believe so. And
I
was like, it was just something about that moment and the sacrifice he made when I'm like, he's getting out. I thought he was going to die, or the other guy was going to die. We're good. And then they took it from me, and I was like, oh, my gosh.
No, I mean.
It hit so hard.
You know, when you're a storyteller, the number one thing that you want to do is get the audience on your character's side. So that's why, you know, Harry Potter works so well. The first lines of Harry Potter is like, Harry Potter's a little young boy that his guardians hate him. And he lives under the stairs. Isn't that sad? You're like, yeah, that's sad. Now I care, right? But all these characters, I don't care about them until they died. You know, like
sure.
Like I just barely got him, and then they're gone, and I'm like, dude, that was cool. You're dead, and it sucks, and that's why it's called the disaster, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
and it's why when the Jedi come, you feel like, fuck yeah, all right, guys, they're here. Let's go, Avar Chris. You know.
Even in like the, I don't know, second or third chapter, there was like a couple people who were just like on a monitoring station, and like they're just going through the story of like what they did and what they saw, and we better do this, we better report this to everyone so they know. Yeah. We can't just take off and run, and they report it so everyone knows, but die in the process. And I was like, well, damn, man, that sucks, you know. And it was like a disaster movie. Like watching, like, I don't know, 2012 or Day After Tomorrow, or you know, those kind of movies.
Well, because the government, the Jedi, all this, like, everything's perfect until it's not, right? Yeah. And you don't want to read a book about a perfect world. You want to read a book about a perfect world that one day something happened and everything changed. Yeah. So that's where we start. This show, you know, this book. Yeah. But I agree. There's like a sense of bittersweetness where you're like, oh man, that was a great moment. And I'm sorry I didn't get to see that character grow. Yeah. You know?
Like, I was driving, because we were doing vacation. I was driving, listening to when the captain died. And, like, I had, like, tears. I'm like, you know, like, just driving down the street. And I'm like, oh, no. So, but no, character-wise, I think there's some really good characters in this.
Fantastic.
Like,
some, you know, there's a lot of Jedi to keep track of. There are. And I have to admit, I don't have it with me, but I had a bookmark that just had names. Who they were attached to. I did try to go and find some pictures, you know, because the strength of a movie or a TV show is that you can convey the visuals instantly. You don't need to, you know, go on for a paragraph about what a character looks like. But when I'm thinking about Star Wars, like, design is so important. Music is also incredibly important. Sound. We don't got that. We don't have that here, but we do have the incredible descriptions of what it feels like to use the Force.
I have sound.
You have sound.
They play music in mine.
I know. I really need to start listening to them.
It is pretty cool
I'm
to
stubborn.
have
I still write with like a pencil.
Oh yeah, mine's all.
You got a pencil. You know what I'm talking about. I'm an old man. I want to hold on to my paper. I like my paper, you know. But I really do need to, and I can still use the book, but I just need to listen along. Sure, I think, and I'll get there. But you know. When I was a kid or when I was younger, like, I did that all the time. So that muscle of being able to visualize what's on the page was easier for me. Sure. It's not so easy anymore because I've let that atrophy over the years. So I'm excited that Badonkagong gives me the chance to flex that again. Sure. So I had a lot of, you know, great moments, but for me, it's always the characters. I like Elzar, man. Okay. Mon, I don't know how you say it.
That was the one with Avar Chris a lot, right?
The guy that never uses the Force the same way twice.
Sure.
I really like that. I love his perspective. Avar has a great moment in her head when she's like, I'm valuable because I can look at things and bring people together and unify. But Elzar looks at things a different way. And the stuff that I'm weak at, he's strong. Sure. Whereas he's weak, I'm strong. And they kind of imply, like, if the Jedi weren't a thing, like they grew up together, you can tell they love each other.
Yeah,
they totally do.
There's something there.
But they're all. It's like two Obi-Wan Kenobis, and now we know if Obi-Wan met himself, he would be attracted to him. We all already are. Of course, he would to himself. Yeah. So it really feels like two prime Jedi that understand what it means to not form an attachment, but they still kind of form an attachment. Yeah. And that's the great hypocrisy of what it is to be a Jedi. The best Jedi fight for their attachments, but the greatest Sith hold on to those attachments too long, right? I mean, that's the great hypocrisy of Star Wars. That's why we have to have balance. And I think it's really cool to have a great galaxy-wide threat that disrupts the balance, and it's not the Sith. It's not the dark side. It's
like a gang.
It's a gang.
Cult.
It's a bunch of pieces of shit.
Yeah,
that got their hands on some incredible technology.
Incredible old people. And
an incredibly old woman who I felt so bad for. What a way to make your villain.
Yeah.
Right? Marchion Ro. Like when he's shocking this old lady in this pool and you're just hooking her up to life support and she what an incredible mind. Like, what a dick. And I just love immediately I'm like, fuck this guy.
Yeah.
Great storytelling.
Well, and he had that Marchion had that Palpatine-ish setup with like all of his plans of what he wanted to do to where he ends up on top. And it's like, now they are appeased. I got kind of what I wanted, and everything worked out where I want, and now I can push further, which is why I really want to read more of the High Republic too, because I'm like, where does that go with what they did? And this the paths. I thought was an interesting thing too, because like they talk about hyperspace. And
what a great crash course in the hyperspace.
Yeah, like how little they know about it and how it works, and like
the average Star Wars fan, I would even say a pretty decent Star Wars fan, has no idea how hyperspace works.
No, it's like you just go fast through space, right?
No,
it's like no, that's not how it works. That's not what you do.
No, you literally are slipping into another dimension, and you go straight there, but it's dangerous. And despite what the Santekas say, what a cool tie-in for Lor Santeca.
I've heard the name before.
So Lor Santeca is in episode 7. In the very beginning, Oscar Isaac has a great scene with Max von Sydow, and that's Lor Santeca. So Santeca.
So it's just there in the very beginning, and that's all it was.
That's all he is. But what does he have? He has the hidden map to Luke Skywalker, or we could say the hidden map to the First Jedi Temple. It's cool that the Santecas are this. They come from this clan of hyperspace prospectors, right? That it would make sense that maybe Luke could possibly or that guy found this hyperspace prospector family has the key to Luke Skywalker.
So is this like is it like a force thing that they can do this prospecting of hyperspace, or is it just a technology thing? Like
I don't know.
When I was reading through it, I'm like, how does she do this?
How does she do it?
And like, what can we? Like, why is it her? Because they're like, this old lady is the one who can do this, and I'm like, what's so special about her? So I'm like, is it a force thing?
Yeah.
If it's technology, just take the technology, and you don't need to
it's not
torture
technology.
this old woman anymore. So I'm like,
they talk about how like she doesn't even understand the math that's in her head. It's happening in the background. You could say that's very much like Anakin picking up a pod racer, and he just knows how to do it, whereas no other human can do it. I think that's the important thing. Like Anakin says, like, I'm the only human that can do it, and it seems that Mary Santeca is the only person that can do these crazy mathematical prospects. It's very fantasy, but it's very sci-fi.
I feel like I fall, especially in the Star Wars universe anymore, if there's something that's kind of an unexplained new thing, I'm like, it's probably force related somehow, right? Because you get like the witch's Dathomir, it's like there's magic. It's like, well, actually, it's force related, you know. And then you get like these people that can tell the future and stuff. It's like actually, they're just using the force to do this. Like, oh, okay. So I hope we get a little bit more of kind of explaining how that works and stuff, and like the Santeca family or whatever.
I need to learn more about the Santecas. I believe they appear in comic books. I just haven't read. Okay. At least Lor Santeca does, but. We meet them on Naboo, and they use the word Varikino. Varikino is the exact house that Padme and Anakin will go in Episode 2, right? it's interesting that Lord Santeca, when I think of his lines from that movie, from Force Awakens, he talks about Leia and says, to me, she's royalty. And I always thought, well, he's talking about Alderaan. Yeah. He could be thinking of Naboo now, because we know that the Santecas were on Naboo.
That's an interesting idea.
Isn't it? Yeah, I never really thought of it that way.
Well, because you have Princess Organa, of Alderaan, but she's also princess in a way of
But he might have
Naboo.
lived in Queen Amidala's house,
so,
you know?
I don't know how royalty works with them.
Me either.
Once you were a queen
It's
and
a
you're not a
politician.
queen anymore, like you kind of, like it's not a bloodline, so.
No, but it was a fun little thought exercise that when I read, the Lord, like Santeca's there on Naboo, and they're on Varekino, interesting, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
So, I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing or not.
Sure, but I like having these things, especially something like this that is hundreds of years before Episode 1.
Yeah,
it has a little bit of ties to the prequels, but also has ties to the sequel trilogy and stuff. And I like seeing that, especially from what I understand, like they got the writing group together for the High Republic era,
large
and
group.
like they started working on what their phases and stories were going to be. I imagine similar to like Marvel, like figuring out what movies they want to have and what stories they want to do and where they end. So I'm like, this is cool to like, this is the first book to set it up, have other people work, and we have a general goal that we're going towards. Yeah. I'm excited to see like what that journey's like.
Me too. We talked a little bit about the weakness of, or what is a weakness of reading a book versus watching a movie. I know that, and we have all these images that are ready to go, but sometimes it's just hard to get them into a conversation.
Sure.
I think that what I would like to do, we have a person on our Discord that helps us out with some stuff, Nexus. I think that for the next time we do something like this, I want to see all the visuals as I'm reading. Like when I see a light beam, the Jedi ship light beams and stuff like that sounds cool.
What does it look like?
But I'm dumb now. I need to see a picture. And apparently they released a bunch of these pictures before it happened. So I think going into the next one, maybe Nexus can help us I don't want to get spoilers, but being able to, like, when something pops up, I kind of have a directory of, like, what's this image?
Sure.
Because right now, because we're coming to this late to the party, I am a little hesitant about
what should I look up?
I don't want to look anything up. I don't want to look up and, Bell Zettifar, and he has, like, half a face. I'm like, what happened? Bell, no! I don't want that to happen.
Sure,
so
yeah.
There's a little bit of me that's like, I got to be careful. But for the next one, the next time we jump into this, which I'm not really sure what the next one is.
I think it's Rising Storm or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Which, that makes sense with the nail that we learned.
Sure, yeah.
I would like to have some type of, like, visual dictionary for that. So maybe we can put that together, and that can be something that we can offer to fans that are going to be reading along with us.
That'd be cool, yeah.
So we'll try to do that. But Donkey Gonk, we'll get on it. We'll work with Nexus. I know. Nexus will get there. He's not a Sam Witwer, but it's good.
Talking about Bell, his story was one that I really liked too. Because one, it was like kind of seeing what it's like to be a Padawan and being
a
trained
young man
and stuff.
In this,
which I enjoy seeing that. Like I like the Jedi Apprentice novels from back in the day, the young adult like Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan kind of books and stuff.
Yeah, the Karen Travis books. And stuff like
this
that.
had that same kind of feel a little bit, but not people that I know. Yes. I know Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan. I don't know these guys. So Loden Greatstorm and his training methods for the Bell.
I love this picture we have of him here too.
With Char,
with
right?
Ember.
Ember.
He's a Char Hound. I think his name's Ember.
Okay.
Yeah, but what a cool design too.
Yeah,
I love his colors and the green lightsaber.
But
it's awesome.
Their story, like I enjoyed it. Like their part in the disaster, like trying to get those people on the ship and stuff.
Dude, Loden Greatstorm is so fucking cool.
He's a really cool character.
He's
I love
a Jedi I want to be,
But his push and his trust in his Padawan is really good, and I love the coming back to you have to learn to jump.
Yeah.
Right? And they do it in the very beginning, and then Loden saves him.
Yep.
And then we have another training method later on when Loden's like, I'm going to stay up here. You're jumping, and you better stop yourself. But he has another Jedi down below in case he can't get it.
Yeah, fucking Bell thinks he's dead.
He does.
He's like, well, I fucked up. I'm going to die now.
Too late.
I better die.
I give up. So.
And then I think it's Indira that saves him.
Yes.
I think that's where I got the name.
That's who that was. So that element there, I was like, oh my gosh.
But then you have the rule of threes, right?
And that's one thing I was waiting on too. And I love that when you get to that part, it's not about Bell having to do it to save Bell. It turns into Bell has to do it to save this girl.
Yep.
And it was just
so fucking cool.
It was a really cool moment to
it's
just
a
have
Luke
him
Skywalker
like,
moment.
I close my eyes, I focus on her, I feel the Force, and like I ignore everything else, and I stop us and slow us down. And I was like, oh, it's so good.
It's the best part of this franchise. It's why I commit so much love and attention to Star Wars, because you have moments like that I can, read a book, look at a character that doesn't have my skin color, doesn't have my experiences, and feel jubilation in their experience.
Yeah.
So great.
And it's also like there's that dark shadow over that scene too,
Yes.
I feel like,
Yeah,
where it's
very
like
much so.
his master sends him to go do that, and that's the last he sees of him, because later he goes to that ship to save the last guy that he needs to save, and gets captured. And then they don't know where he's at, if he's alive, is he dead, what's going on. Which is why like the Rising Stormer is really interesting too, with like the Nihil and Loden Greatstorm, and it's like they even reference that. It's like, what's your name? Greatstorm? Oh,
He quite likes that name.
So Markion, Loden, Bell, like those were some of my favorite characters.
Yeah, man.
Actually, the whole
way
crew,
he used his lightsaber.
the whole crew with them was really cool.
Yeah.
I loved the dog they had.
Yeah.
I
love that planet, the metal planet with like metal sheep and cows, and as like the horses that they're riding on, like they can see them in the distance because the sparks are hitting the metal.
Yeah.
What a cool idea for this like living metal planet. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in Star Wars. Have you?
Not that I remember.
I mean, holy rusted metal, Batman.
I mean, there's like the junk planets that have metal all over, but
sure,
they're not made of metal. You know?
The animals aren't metal. They don't have charhounds.
Yeah.
You know, that's cool. That's just cool shit. That's imaginative. I'm glad that the Lucasfilm Story Group or whatever, whoever came up with that, good job. I want to see it in The Mandalorian.
Another thing I really liked, and it revolves around that group that was on that planet.
Yeah.
There was I think it was another guy that was with them, right? There was the other Jedi, and there was like another guy who was like an old Jedi, but now he's just kind of on an outpost out
Porter
here.
Engle.
Porter, yeah, him.
Who I think is my favorite Jedi in the book.
Is he?
I love this. I love retired old men that come back and do shit. It's just, it's cheating. It's like putting Metallica in your soundtrack. I'm just going to love it. But this guy, he's this happy-go-lucky cook. He's had all of these Jedi lives, but the one that he ends up on, the one that he retires on, is like, I'm going to be the cook. Mm-hmm. And then the Nihil take that family.
Yeah.
And he turns into the Blade of Bardata, whatever they call it, right?
Yeah.
He turns into that. I love that moment. I'm like, holy shit, who is this man? That's the way I felt.
Yeah.
So cool.
I love that. Them chasing them down, because I believe it's him that he takes out like a couple guys.
Yeah.
And there's one, which is another thing I really like too. There's one Nihil that he takes out.
Yeah.
And then he goes to get back on like his horse.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. And he like headshot that guy, but his brain may not be in his head because he's an alien. And I'm like, it's an alien. It's so good.
I know.
I wasn't expecting. I figured he was dead. And he gets up to start to shoot him, and then the Charhound shows up. And I was like, oh my God.
I love that.
I thought he was dead.
Yariel Poof, who appears in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the Jedi from the Council in Episode 1. Like, he has two brains.
Yeah.
He has one in his head and one, like, in his chest.
Okay.
That's why he's really good at mind tricks. I always love those little details and that was a George Lucas thing,
That's cool.
In here, we like, well, I don't know where his brain is.
Which they reference in this book, mind tricks, right? But they called it like a mind touch or something, right? And I thought that
we
was...
actually have a picture of, Jake, you have it up. It's the, Kyle, I'm sorry.
Porter?
Of Porter. I just wanted to show, I don't know if you've seen a picture of him or not.
Yeah, okay.
It's the old man with the beard.
Right below the guy with the dog?
Yeah, you can see him right there.
You meant Gonk is who you're talking about, right?
I totally did.
Not Kyle.
Not Kyle. Anyway, I really like that picture. I did look him up.
Okay.
Yes. I did end up looking him up. I thought it was worth the spoilers.
Bardatan, that's the from the Clone Wars, right? That Jar Jar had a relationship with the Queen, right?
Is Bardata
is that the same thing?
Yeah. Am I he was the blade of something? Maybe I said Bordata and filled in a blank. I don't remember.
I don't.
It's the blade of something. But yeah, that would be Bordata. Bordatans. And Episode 1 had a Bordatan as a pod racer. He was the guy with like the goggles that you can't see through, and he's like, "Ah!" as he hits into a thing. That's a Bordatan. And then, of course, Jar Jar and the queen of the Bordatans do yoga together?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
So, but anyway, whenever you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, Bordatan. So it's interesting to see like a Bordatan being like, because what it felt like, at least in the Clone Wars, there is that they had a Force connection, but they weren't typically Jedi.
Sure.
So
it colors the history.
I was like seeing different alien races become like a Wookiee be a Jedi, you know, which we had a Wookiee as a Jedi in this book as well, and like the Master could speak.
Yes. Uriaga. Our boy, Burry.
I think this is the one too that has like a cross hilt in their art.
A lot of them do,
and I thought that was really cool.
We have a picture of the Wookiee Jedi right up here, and he does have. They specifically called it Electrum, or they had a word for it. It reminded me of something that Mace Windu's lightsaber is made out of.
Okay,
it's kind of like this saber-resistant material, but a lot of the cross guards are
made of that material.
Yeah, they're very like shiny and
I
new.
just like seeing that the old ones have that because it also relates to Kylo Ren a bit.
Yeah, of course.
It also relates to Star Wars Rebels a little bit. Like just seeing like here's this old battlefield of what happened.
And it also has
a
feeling of
old knights.
More fantasy.
Yeah, the knights, right? The Knights of the Round Table and stuff. They had that Excalibur kind of look to it.
It matches these Jedi.
Okay.
The Jedi that we have, you know, they're a little more samurai, Ronin. They are a little bit too involved with the government, and they become generals, and like, you know. But here we have like these kind of like storybook knight swordsmen, right?
Mm-hmm.
In a way, with they're a little bit more peaceful and a little bit more fair-minded, and you know, like like we have with Porter or whatever. Like he fiercely defends people that that can't fight for themselves. I quite like that. One of my favorite scenes in the whole book. It's a very simple scene. But when they first go up to that farm and those like mining bombs are coming at them through the ground, do you remember that part?
The mining bombs.
There's like the Nihil have taken the family.
Yeah.
And when they get there, these like mines like go through the ground.
When the Jedi get there?
When the Jedi get there, and these mines are coming through the ground, and Bell is like, oh shit, you know. So he jumps up and he like, you know, he's trying to like use his lightsaber to hit the mines coming at him, but it's very sloppy. And then you have Loden Greatstorm, who just fucking picks him up and throws him out of the way, and they explode. But then you have Porter, and they talk about like he puts his saber like, you know, backwards, and he just lets them come up and he cuts every single one. I thought that was so fucking sweet.
That's really cool. I like that.
What a great moment to show like how different characters come about the same situation.
Sure.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the scene I started thinking about was before that one when the Nihil are coming in. I enjoyed the families.
Me too.
Like everyone getting the panic room,
Yeah.
and like the wife who was like tapping at her screens and like controlling these like robots all at the same time.
It gives you a feeling of Beru and Lars.
A little bit,
Lars
yeah.
Homestead,
Defending their homestead and everything, and it was really cool to have that moment and the explosions and like it didn't work.
Yeah.
But one kept moving, and I was like, oh shit, and it blows up, and it's like all the damage they did to these Nihil on an easy like hostage kind of idea and stuff, and I was like, that was a cool moment.
Yeah.
The family fighting back, not the Jedi, seeing other people fight back is really cool to do.
Agree.
I also enjoyed. We were talking about the Wookiee. One, I like seeing the Wookiee. I also like seeing the Trandoshan being a Jedi.
Yeah,
which I thought was cool.
Seeker. I don't know how to say it. Skeer. Seeker.
Man, I forget. I know they said it in the book. I'm trying to think of how they said it.
He's like the not apprentice, but he's like the number 2 of what Starlight Beacon.
Yeah, I believe so.
The Jedi representative or whatever, right?
Yes. So I like him because it's just neat to see a Trandoshan. It's neat to see different alien races.
And we had another Trandoshan as a Nihil too, so we got like representative Trandoshans on both sides. Right?
Yeah.
Like the Nihil one is like, okay, that's the Trandoshan we know, but this is a very different Trandoshan.
They even talk about how Trandoshan like warrior beliefs don't typically align with the way Jedi are too, and I was like, I like that as a conversation.
That guy has to give up more than just these personal attachments. He has to give up a culture.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It was almost like his old religion. He has to give up to join this religion.
Yeah.
But the one of my favorite things about the Wookiee, there's a scene during, I think, the disaster where they're getting ready to blow up these pieces of the ships and stuff. And they're like, all right, everyone ready to fire? And the Wookiee's like, ah! And like, just,
what the fuck's going on?
He just starts freaking
He's
out.
like, there's people!
I like that. Like, it shows, like, even though there's other Jedi there, that Jedi, I feel like it shows connections to the Force in so many different ways through this because we're seeing so many different Jedi.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, even though these other Jedi, his master, these other masters didn't sense that, this Wookiee did. And then later on, they're even like, this is the Jedi that saved you.
And then it's just cool to, like, as that information grows throughout the system, like, Avar Krisk gets it, you know, like, and it, like, I think it's cool to see how much cooperation there is in this part of the galaxy because, I mean, for a very good reason, Sidious comes and fucks up all cooperation.
Yeah.
Pretty much people cooperate with him, and that's how he becomes Emperor. So that was cool. I do want to say, like, I like when books like this can make you think on characters from just the movies, right? Like, Burry is interesting, but I never really thought about being in the mind of a Wookiee and how frustrating Chewbacca must be. He can understand everybody, but no one can understand him.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, hey, stop what you're doing. Yeah. They're like, what's he saying?
And you know what? At one point, I related to him so hard that I had to, like, reread this line over and over again. He talks about how when people think that you're not listening, they don't care if you're not speaking. It was something like that. But as a person that has challenges hearing people, sometimes when I'm with a lot of people, I just give up. I'm like, I'll hear what I hear, you know. But people tend to, like, they look at me and they think that I'm being standoffish or something's wrong with me, you know. But it's really just like I can't fucking hear anything. And when you don't speak, people just they end up like this having conversations like as if you're not there. And I've never related with Chewbacca more. I really haven't. So it was cool that High Republic got me.
Kind of showed you that. Okay, that's cool. I like that. Oh man, no, I mean there's lots of characters and stuff that I liked in this one a lot.
There is. I did want to speak a little tiny bit about just how cool, for lack of a better term, the disaster is. The Legacy run breaks. It tries to avoid the ship that's in the way, right?
There's like another. There's one of the Nihil's ships gets crossed
and
in there.
And the Santekas say like that's like I couldn't believe that. I love Star Wars so much, and when one of the Santekas, I think it was Marlowe, I can't remember, but who was like, well, yeah, when you jump into hyperspace, it's like you've created your own dimension that you're traveling in. No other ship can get in that dimension.
Yeah.
And Avar Kriss even says like, I'll never not think about that every time I jump to hyperspace.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm going like, huh. I never thought about that when it comes to Star Wars. What a gift a book can give me.
Like, what does that mean with technology that like, how does the paths work that this one could do that?
Yeah.
Like, how does it work when you pull ships out of hyperspace?
Yeah.
You know?
And
like,
Dexter,
when you try to follow people through hyperspace, like, what is that like?
Hyperspace tracking and the sequels,
There's so many different things. I'm like, man, if you're going through dimensions, like, what is the tracking like? Or is it just like, I know the point they're coming out, not necessarily the dimension they're in, you know? Like, there's all these questions I have.
I know there's some fans that are like, you know, I don't think Lucas was thinking about that whenever he created hyperspace, you know? And I think I understand people that maybe don't like that idea for hyperspace, but for me, it just enhances the idea. Guys, this is a space fantasy. It is not sci-fi. It's not hard science. This is a storybook.
Yeah.
And whenever you hit a button and you travel into an alternate dimension, so you don't have to drive all the way there, that's fantasy. But also there's the idea of wormholes and all that shit, which one day might be real, so who knows what I'm talking about.
We're looking at the difference, I think, between hyperspace and light speed.
Yeah.
You know?
Sure.
Like, light speed is like the speed of light, whereas hyperspace is us going through another dimension to get there really quick.
Yeah, a ship has to get into that alternate dimension, they have to speed up, right, to light speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just, I
can see why people are confused. I can see why I, as a kid, was confused for years.
Yeah.
But this idea that this ship that's in hyperspace breaks up, right? Because it tried to avoid something. You never want to move.
Yeah, you're not trying to maneuver and stuff in it. I do like the descriptions of that with Captain Hedda being like, she made the ship move as she wanted. You know, like the way they describe what she's doing and how she's like a starfighter pilot.
Yeah.
But this is a big, old, like, freighter. It's not meant to make these, but she makes it do it just as she wants it to. Yeah. But it's just a little too much strain on the ship, you know?
The ship was too old, right? Yeah. You know, she's got it where it counts, but just too old. But I just love this idea that happens, and hyperspace is such an unknown quantity in the galaxy, and the galaxy's so big, but this thing spreads and shoots out into, like, not random, because they're able to calculate it eventually, but, you know, like, weeks later, shit's shooting out of hyperspace. Yeah. Like, that's so scary. And it shows why the Holdo maneuver in the sequels is like, you don't want to be doing that.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. There could be disasters happening right now because of what Holdo did. That's why Beaumont Ken says, like, that's 1 in a million. Don't do that. But, you know, that's how these cool living mythologies are made. I can, like, pull on this string over here and something from this movie tugs, you know?
Yeah.
I can pull on this new string over here and something from the High Republic tugs up, you know?
Yeah.
Really cool. It's what I enjoy the most, and it's why I'm not really a canon hound.
Sure.
You know?
I can't imagine what it'd be like to be, like, looking in the sky and all of a sudden, like, things just appear.
Yeah.
And then crash into something like immediately because things are like slowing down enough that they pop out of light speed and they're just.
Well, even it's popping out of hyperspace like really far away, but because hyper lanes are pointed at shit, they're just shooting galleries, right?
Yeah.
Like they say in our solar system, the best thing for Earth is that Jupiter or Saturn, one of them, like it's so big and its orbit is such that anything that's coming into to the sun gets directed there. So Earth is out of the shooting gallery, right? I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like take ideas like that, and then you have this thing appears out of hyperspace, but it's gonna take 20 minutes to get here. But there's nothing you can do, and millions will die.
Yeah.
And you don't know what's gonna happen. And then the Jedi arrive.
And luckily, this ship heard the distress call.
Yeah.
And it was nearby.
And then you're like, all right, let's blow this shit out of the sky. And then Burry's like, there's people, they're afraid. It's like, well, what do we do now? It's like, we have to land. You're like, what? How? And you have these really cool characters like Joss and Pika Arden, that are just like civilians. They're not Jedi or anything, but when there is a need, heroes arise. Not just Jedi, but a whole galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really cool.
They make that plan to do like a crazy maneuver and like shoot the things with like hooks and stuff.
It makes you feel like, okay, that's what the High Republic is. It's not an era. It's an idea, right?
That was my favorite part about what the High Republic is and what the Republic is like the We Are the Republic idea.
We Are the Republic
is like you have Jedi and they go to the ground. And then you have other Jedi up in space, but then you have other non-Jedi up in space that are also just doing whatever they can to try to, that captain who's trying to save all the lives from that space station thing.
The one guy that figures out how this shit is working. He's trying to record, so he gets all those like droid brains and puts them together.
It's like I need like 10,000 droids.
And then it's overheating, and then fucking Azar Main does the rainstorm. That's so fucking metal. That's so fantasy.
It is.
And what those droid brains are doing, like all of that computing power is happening in Mari Santeca's brain. What? That's so cool. So it's a really well done book, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think like what they introduced character wise, one makes me very curious on where we're gonna go with a lot of this stuff. But
me too.
I mean, it just I don't know. I didn't have an issue necessarily with any character or anything, and I always wanted to learn more about each one.
Oh yeah.
So
I was really wrapped up into it, and I can't wait to get into more. It really did feel like, hey, this is the first of something new. It didn't feel like a complete book, honestly, to me. I got to the end, I was kind of disappointed. Not in the book, but because it ended.
No, it's over. I want more.
Yeah, which I think some of the best storytelling, especially something like Star Wars, that gets its love language from from the old serials, right? Flash Gordon and that stuff, where it's like, tune in next week, folks. What's gonna happen to our heroes? So you gotta have that for a series. So as a beginning book, I enjoyed this more than I did. I'm gonna be honest here, like the first New Jedi Order books back in the old EU. And maybe I'm a different person now, and I appreciate different things. But as of right now, I'm into this a lot.
No, I felt like this reminded me a lot of old EU Legends types books of just like what they felt like, what they introduced and everything. So.